In the village of Obade, where whispers of spirits danced with the wind, a young girl named Nawira possessed a gift unlike any other, the ability to speak to ancestors through the rhythm of her drum. One night, her melody stirred something ancient, something restless. And as the village listened in awe, Nawira realized that she had awakened a force that would change Obade forever. The village of Obade sat cradled between the great Njuri River and the sprawling Nile plains, where the sun bathed the earth in golden hues and the wind carried whispers of ancestors long gone. In the heart of this land, under the mighty baobab tree, lived Nawira, a girl with a gift unlike any other. Since childhood, Nawira had always felt an inexplicable pull toward the rhythms of life, the steady pulse of the river, the rustling of the leaves, the distant calls of birds soaring through the skies. But her deepest connection was with her drum. A gift from her late grandmother, the drum was no ordinary instrument. Its hide, stretched taut, bore the markings of ancestors, and its hollowed wooden base carried echoes of stories lost to time. Each evening, Nawira would sit beneath the great baobab, her fingers gliding over the drum's surface as she prepared to play. The villagers would often pause their tasks to listen, enchanted by the haunting yet beautiful melodies that spilled from her fingertips. But some, especially the elders, would grow uneasy, exchanging wary glances whenever Nawira's rhythm lingered too long. Obade was a village of traditions, bound by the wisdom of generations past. The elders spoke of spirits, some benevolent, some vengeful, who roamed the lands unseen. And in their warnings, they always cautioned the young ones, never disturb the echoes of the past. "You play well, child," Elder Jalea once told Nawira, her wrinkled hands tightening around her walking staff. "But there is a power in sound, and power can summon things beyond understanding." Yet Nawira never feared the voices carried by her drum. In its rhythms, she felt comfort, a strange but familiar presence, as though the very heartbeat of Obade spoke back to her. The evening before her 12th harvest festival, Nawira sat alone by the river, her drum resting in her lap. The moon was high, casting a silver glow upon the waters, and the village fires flickered distantly like stars scattered upon the land. Tonight, she would play differently. Not just for the village, but for the spirits. She struck the first note soft and steady, like the footsteps of ancestors. The second beat came stronger, carrying the pulse of warriors long gone. The third echoed like a voice calling from across time. Then, something changed. A sound not her own answered her. It was faint at first, like a distant rumbling, but with every beat she played, the echo grew louder, richer, as though the land itself had begun to drum back. Nawira paused, her hands frozen above her instrument. The river's surface rippled unnaturally, and the air around her thickened, charged with something unseen. Then, from the depths of the forest beyond the river, a whisper curled into the wind. "You have awakened us." A chill ran through Nawira's spine. She turned, expecting to see someone, perhaps one of the elders who had warned her before. But the land was empty, silent except for the hum now vibrating through the air. Something was listening. Back in the village, the fire pits sputtered, their flames shrinking as the wind carried the unseen voice through the huts. Animals grew restless, shifting in their pens, and the night, once calm, suddenly felt alive. Elder Jalea emerged from her hut, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Something stirs," she muttered, gripping her staff. The villagers, sensing the shift in the air, began murmuring. Then, the baobab tree, the ancient witness of Obade, shuddered. A cry rang through the night. Not of fear, but of recognition. A sound that had been waiting, lingering in silence for generations. Nawira, still by the river, felt her hands tremble. She had played the beats of ancestors, and now, something had answered. Was it a blessing? Or a warning? She did not know. But one thing was certain. The spirits had awakened. The night air was thick with unease. Even as the moon stood high, casting pale silver light upon the village, Obade did not sleep. Elder Jalea walked slowly through the narrow paths between the huts, her staff tapping against the earth in a rhythm far more ancient than even the oldest stories. The villagers whispered behind closed doors, their fires dimmed to embers. Something had stirred a force beyond their understanding. And at the center of it all, Nawira sat beneath the towering baobab tree, her drum resting against her knees, her heart pounding. She did not understand what had happened. Yet the drum did. She could feel it beneath her fingertips, the faint vibration, the lingering hum that still trembled within its hollowed wood. Something had answered her call. But who, or what? The elders gathered near the tree, their expressions solemn. Elder Jalea raised her hand for silence, though none had dared to speak. The wind curled around them, carrying whispers from the river, from the plains, from the unseen realm beyond their world. "You have awakened a presence," Elder Jalea said, her voice firm yet weary. She looked at Nawira, and for the first time, there was fear in her wise old eyes. "Not all spirits welcome the living." Nawira swallowed. "I did not mean to summon anything." "The spirits do not care for intent," another elder murmured. "They listen when they are called." A hush settled over the village. It was known that the spirits dwelled beyond the great Njuri River, walking among the shadows of the ancient trees. Some guided the lost, offering whispers of wisdom when the winds were kind. Others were not so forgiving. Elder Jalea knelt before Nawira, her aged fingers brushing the surface of the drum. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply as if reading the rhythm trapped within it. Then, she sighed. "There was once a boy," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was young, gifted like you. He, too, believed that the spirits would answer him with kindness. But what he summoned was no blessing." Nawira listened, her breath shallow. She had heard this tale before, but only in passing, only in warnings shared among the children when the night grew too quiet. The boy, Jalea continued, called upon a name that had not been spoken for generations. It answered. And for his mistake, his voice was taken never to be heard again. A sharp gust of wind rushed through the tree, lifting the edges of Nawira's tunic and curling around her drum. The village fires flickered, as though something unseen had drawn near. Jalea met her gaze. "Tell me, Nawira," she said carefully. "Did the spirits answer with kindness? Or did they whisper in hunger?" Nawira's fingers curled around the rim of the drum. She thought back to the sound, the echo that had risen from the depths of the forest, the voice that had wrapped itself around her like an unseen force. It had not felt angry. It had felt lost. "I don't know," she admitted. "It did not threaten me. It only answered." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. The villagers who stood nearby shifted, their feet brushing against the dry earth. Jalea exhaled. "Then we must tread carefully." She turned to the gathered crowd, raising her voice. "For generations, we have respected the boundaries between our world and theirs. No one crosses the river. No one disturbs the spirits. And above all, no one calls them by name." Her gaze returned to Nawira. "From this night forward, you must not play your drum after sunset." Nawira's heart sank. Her drum was her voice, her gift, her connection to the world. To silence it felt like cutting away a piece of her very being. "But..." Jalea's eyes flashed. "No arguments, child. The spirits have stirred once. They must not be given reason to stir again." Nawira swallowed her protest. She nodded. The elders slowly dispersed, muttering prayers beneath their breath. The villagers did the same, retreating into their homes, shutting their doors firmly. Only Nawira remained, sitting under the tree, her fingers resting lightly against the drum's surface. The night was still now, as if waiting. The spirits had answered. And they were listening. The weight of the elders' warning sat heavily on Nawira's shoulders. That night, she lay in her hut, staring at the thatched roof, listening to the slow hum of the wind outside. The village had gone quiet since the spirits answered her drum, but she could feel something in the air, a presence lingering, watching, waiting. Her fingers twitched with longing. "Do not play after sunset." But the rhythm lived inside her. It pulsed beneath her skin, in the beat of her heart, in the way the night itself seemed to whisper. Outside, the village fires had dimmed, casting flickering shadows against the earth. The wind curled softly through the huts, carrying with it the distant echo of rustling leaves, the faint murmur of water weaving through the river beyond. Nawira sat up. The drum lay beside her, silent yet alive. She swallowed. What harm could it do to play just one note? Carefully, she lifted the instrument onto her lap, her fingers resting against its surface. A single breath. A single beat. Thump. The sound carried softly at first, barely more than a whisper against the night. Then, something answered. It wasn't a sound. Not like before. This time, the response came in the way the air shifted, in the way the trees beyond the village shivered as if something unseen had moved through them. A ripple ran through the ground beneath her hut. Nawira held her breath, her heart pounding. The drum trembled slightly beneath her hands. She had felt the echoes before, but this was different. It wasn't an ordinary spirit listening in the wind, it was something older, something searching. You have awakened us. The voice curled inside her mind, not spoken aloud but felt in the bones of her being. It was neither harsh nor kind, neither welcoming nor warning. It simply was. She gripped the sides of the drum, her fingers shaking slightly. Who are you? She whispered into the night. No answer. But the air remained thick, charged with the presence that had stirred days before. Then, the flames of the village fire sputtered. Not extinguished, but pulled back as if something unseen had inhaled them, drawn them inward like a living breath. Footsteps. Not of men, not of animals. Something between. Nawira stiffened, her pulse hammering as the sound neared her hut. She dared not move, dared not breathe. And then silence. For a long moment, the air held still. Then came a whisper, gentle but certain, curling into the wind, "Come to the river." Nawira gasped, stumbling backward, pressing herself against the wall of her hut. She knew better. The elders had warned her no one crossed the river after dark, no one ventured into the trees beyond. But now the spirits called for her. She knew she should ignore it. That she should shut her eyes and wait for the dawn. But something deep inside, something far older than herself, knew this was no ordinary call. This was an invitation. A warning. And a choice. Would she answer? Would she step into the unseen world, beyond where her people dared to tread? The night waited. And the spirits listened. The whisper curled around Nawira like the soft breath of the wind. Come to the river. She sat frozen in her hut, staring at the drum in her lap, her heartbeat drumming louder than any rhythm she had ever played. She knew what the elders would say, that no one, should ever follow the voice that called from beyond the village borders. But the air was different now. The spirits had stirred, and Nawira felt herself bound to whatever had answered her drum. Slowly, she stood, gripping her drum tightly, her bare feet pressing against the earth. The village was silent, the night carrying only the distant murmur of the Njuri River. Beyond that, the forest loomed a vast shadow of ancient trees, tangled roots, and whispers of souls forgotten by time. With careful steps, she wove between the huts, her breath steady but sharp. She did not look back. By the time she reached the edge of the river, the moon had softened, casting silver ribbons upon the water's surface. The Njuri was calm, its waves undisturbed by the wind. But something beneath it moved. Nawira could feel it, the presence lingering just beyond the veil of sight. She swallowed. I have come. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the waters trembled. From the depths of the river, a figure rose, not fully solid, not entirely mist, but something caught between the world of the living and the lost. Nawira's breath hitched as she took a step back. The figure was tall, draped in the shadows of his own existence, his face blurred by time. But his eyes, dark and deep as the river itself, were fixed upon hers. I am Olum, he whispered, his voice curling through the wind like the echo of a forgotten song. Nawira clutched her drum tighter, her heart racing. You are a spirit. Olum tilted his head slightly. I was once a man. The words sent a shiver through Nawira's spine. A hunter. Olum's voice was distant, as though he spoke from a memory that barely belonged to him anymore. I was cursed long ago, trapped between the lands of the living and the lands beyond. His eyes darkened. And I have waited for someone to summon me. Nawira's fingers trembled against her drum. Why? She asked cautiously. Olum took a step forward, the river shifting beneath his weightless form. Because only sound carries across the realms. Only rhythm speaks beyond time. He nodded toward her drum. And you, child, you have the gift to set me free. Nawira swallowed hard. Free you? The spirits bound me to this place, Olum murmured. And I have wandered for generations, neither here nor there, unseen but always listening. His gaze locked onto hers. You awakened me with your drum. The wind shivered around them, the river murmuring beneath their feet. The elders had warned of this, the dangers of calling upon the unknown, of disturbing the balance between realms. But Nawira had never feared the spirits. She had always felt their presence, their stories, their longing. She inhaled. What must I do? Olum's shadowed form straightened. Play. The word hung in the air between them, weightless yet heavy. Nawira hesitated. If she played, if she told Olum's story through rhythm, would she be breaking the fragile boundary between their worlds? Would the spirits listen? Or would they retaliate? She did not know. But she did know that Olum was not a monster, nor a curse meant to be feared. He was a soul lost in time. A man who had once been. And Nawira was a girl who could hear the echoes of things forgotten. She lifted her hands over the drum, her fingers trembling. Then, slowly, she began to play. Thump. 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 The night held its breath. The river stirred. And deep within the unseen world, something listened. Nawira's fingers danced across the surface of the drum, each beat carrying the weight of Olum's story. The night thickened around them, the wind curling through the trees as though listening, as though waiting. The rhythm started softly, a gentle hum in the air, rippling through the earth beneath her feet. Then, as the beats grew stronger, the river stirred. Olum stood before her, his shadowed form flickering between solidity and mist, neither fully present nor fully gone. His eyes, deep as the river itself, remained locked onto the rhythm, as though the beats spoke a language only he could understand. Nawira closed her eyes, letting her hands move instinctively. Thump. 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 The sound carried past the banks, beyond the trees, threading itself into the unseen world. And with each pulse, Olum's story unfolded not in words, but in rhythm. He had been young once, strong, proud, a hunter whose arrows never missed their mark. He had walked these lands with purpose, with certainty, until the day he had broken an ancient rule. A hunt too deep into forbidden grounds. A trespass too bold, too careless. And for his mistake, the spirits had bound him neither living nor dead, trapped between the realms, a whisper instead of a man. The rhythm quickened, pulsing through the night like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The trees shivered, the waters bent, and Nawira could feel something shifting, something breaking free. Then, the air changed. A low hum curled through the wind, deep and resonant, almost like an answer. Nawira's breath hitched. The spirits were listening. She struck the drum harder, pouring her own strength into the beat, weaving Olum's sorrow into sound, into movement, into rhythm. The world held its breath. Then, from the river, golden light surged. It rippled through the water, threading itself through the trees, spilling into the air like woven fire. Olum gasped, his shadowed form trembling as the light curled around him, wrapping itself into his being. The rhythm had found him. And now, it was setting him free. His eyes widened as the golden light surged through his chest, his limbs, his voice, his presence growing sharper, fuller, more real. Nawira could barely breathe. She watched as Olum straightened, his shadow thinning, his form becoming whole. Then, his gaze softened. It worked, he whispered, his voice no longer carried by the wind, but his own. Nawira's hand slowed, the beats fading into the night, but the air still hummed with something new, something warm, something ancient. Olum exhaled deeply, closing his eyes. I have walked this world unseen for too long. His gaze met hers, filled with something almost human now. But you have given me back my name. Nawira swallowed, her pulse still racing. Are you free? Olum turned to the river, watching as the golden light curled over its surface, shimmering like a bridge between worlds. He nodded. Yes. And then, as gently as the whisper of the wind, Olum stepped into the light. His form lifted, dissolving into the golden glow, carried beyond the river, beyond the trees, beyond the realm that had bound him for generations. The spirits had listened. The spirits had answered. And Nawira had led one lost soul home. The night fell silent again. But Nawira knew, this silence was not empty. It was peaceful. Obade had been silent for days, but not with fear, with reverence. The villagers whispered of Nawira's drum, of the golden light that surged through the Njuri River, of the soul that had finally found its way home. Olum was gone. Not vanished, not lost, but freed. Nawira sat beneath the great baobab tree, her drum resting in her lap, her fingers tracing the familiar markings worn deep into its surface. The spirits no longer lingered with tension, the air felt lighter, the land felt whole. She had broken no boundary. She had simply listened. The elders gathered that evening, their faces unreadable as they approached Nawira, their staffs pressing gently into the earth as they moved. Elder Jalea stood at the front, her eyes sharp, yet softened with something new, something like understanding. You walked where no child should walk, she said, her voice firm. And yet, you have done what no elder has dared to do. Nawira swallowed but did not shrink under her gaze. I did not call for him, she said softly. He answered me. Jalea studied her for a long moment. The village fires flickered, casting long shadows through the gathering crowd. Then, slowly, the elder nodded. The spirits do not answer just anyone, she murmured. They answer those who know how to listen. A murmur rippled through the villagers, of awe, of respect, of curiosity. Elder Jalea lifted her staff. Obade has long feared the unseen, the echoes of those lost to time. But perhaps we were wrong to silence them. Nawira's chest tightened. They did not fear her anymore. Her drum was no longer a warning. It was a legacy. That night, for the first time in generations, Nawira played beneath the stars, not in fear, not in secrecy, but in honor of all who had come before, of all who still lingered in whispers, in winds, in rhythms woven into the earth. And as her beats carried through the night, the village listened. And the spirits danced. Obade had changed. No longer did the villagers whisper in fear when the wind carried echoes from the river. No longer did the elders hush children when they tapped rhythms against the earth. For the first time in generations, Obade listened. Nawira had done something no one thought possible. She had heard a soul trapped between realms, had woven his story into rhythm, and had led him home. The spirits had answered, and instead of bringing ruin, they had brought peace. The baobab tree stood tall in the heart of the village, its ancient roots entwined with the land, with the past, with the stories that had always lingered in silence. Nawira sat beneath it, her drum resting against her knees, her fingers tracing its worn surface. And this time, when she played, the village did not fear her melody. They joined it. Children clapped their hands, elders hummed along, women and men tapped their feet in quiet reverence. The spirits were not enemies. They were not curses. They were part of them. Nawira had not summoned terror, she had answered a call, had listened where others had feared to tread. And because of that, Obade thrived. The crops grew taller, the river ran clearer, and the skies felt brighter. As if the land itself had breathed easier, unburdened by what had lingered for too long in silence. The story of Olum and Nawira's drum became legend. The elders spoke of it not as a warning, but as a lesson, that sometimes, courage is found not in battling the unknown, but in listening to it. And Nawira, once just a girl with a gift, became known as the keeper of echoes, the one who had reminded Obade that rhythm was not something to fear, but something to honor. The spirits still walked beyond the river, still whispered through the trees. But now, when the wind carried their voices, Obade did not shrink away. They listened. And through Nawira's drum, they answered. In the heart of Obade, beneath the watchful branches of the baobab tree, Nawira's drum still beats, not in fear, but in honor. Its rhythm is more than sound, it is a bridge, a lesson, a legacy. It reminds the world that courage is found not in silence, but in understanding. And as the spirits dance in the wind, as the voices of ancestors whisper through time, one truth remains: those who listen will always find the answers they seek. Like Nawira, you too have stories waiting to be told. You have rhythms buried within you, beats of strength, of wisdom, of change. What echoes are calling you? Will you listen? Will you answer? Will you keep the rhythm alive? Let your voice be heard. Let your story dance. And when the world listens, you'll find that even the unseen will answer.